And we're live on YouTube. So Cameron, if you want to broadcast that.
Yeah.
We're live on YouTube.
Yeah, I will share on the page.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock. So I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to come in. So we'll probably start for everyone watching in a couple of minutes. Okay, I think I'll kick it off now. So, hello and welcome everyone to the second session of season 3 of the Women in Blockchain series, which is organized by the vibrant and amazing Hyperledger India chapter in partnership with the St. Kitts Group. I'm Julian Gordon. I'm the VP for Asia Pacific for Hyperledger Foundation, and I'm delighted to be here today to kick off today's event. Last week, we had a wonderful session moderated by our Hyperledger Foundation's Executive Director, Daniel Barbosa. And today, we're in for a real treat. It's great to see such an esteemed panel of blockchain leaders to discuss actually what is an amazingly important topic, which is blockchain for social good. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing the panelists, and I'm now going to hand over to the moderator, Deepika, who's going to take it over. Thank you, Deepika.
Thanks, Julian. So we're actually hosting this event for the third consecutive year in a row, and it is truly our honor to be able to host such exceptional women in this field. A very warm welcome to all the panelists. I'm Deepika Karanji. I work as a software developer at Walmart Global Tech, and I will be moderating the session along with Prisley Jacob from St. Kitts. Before we start the session, we'd like to introduce our amazing panelists. Prisley, over to you.
Thank you, Deepika. Hello, everyone. So let's start by meeting our panel members. In no particular order, our first panelist is Shilpa Karkera, CEO of Myra Technologies, joining us from NYC and HQ in Singapore. She's an entrepreneur in residence with Entrepreneur First and the Global Top 20 Goldman Sachs Growth Fellow. She's also the author of Unlocking Blockchains on Azure, which shares all the blockchain use cases she worked on since 2015 in several industries from finance to supply chain. Then we have Indumati R, Senior Director of Software Engineering, Dell Technologies. She leads supply chain transformation programs to create and support innovative solutions to enable real-time, secure, and accurate inventory positions across Dell technologies with single and scalable source of truth. Next, we have Ritu Jain, Associate Program Director at Birlasoft. With close to 20 years in the industry, Ritu is also the co-lead at Hyperledger Hyderabad chapter and has worked on blockchain projects spanning supply chain traceability, insurance audit, counterfeit drug detection, warranty management, container tracking, etc. Our next panelist is Debajani Mohanty, Blockchain Practice Head for Collabra Inc. is considered to be one of the top 30 blockchain influencers of India 2021. With 20 plus years of experience, she's an Amazon bestseller blockchain author and solution architect, contributing to approximately 20 blockchain and DLT projects in different verticals and protocols. Then we have Srishti Asudani, Director at Settlement Blockchain Trainer and a blockchain evangelist. She's currently working at Settlement as an emerging technology leader, focused on problem solving and enterprise-grade implementation of technology. As a director for Settlement, Srishti helps enterprises in delivering DLT applications across multi-sectors and industries. She has a deep functional expertise of blockchain and distributed ledger platforms like Hyperledger and Corda. Looking forward to a very interesting discussion. A very warm welcome to you all.
Thanks, Presley. So as the audience can see, our panel is highly experienced and very eminent women in blockchain. So I'm really looking forward to a very fun discussion with all of you. Before we get started, I will be directing my questions to maybe one or two of you, but if anyone else has something to add, feel free to just share your thoughts and speak out. Let's get really chatty and have a wonderful discussion today. So let's start with some kind of context setting, right? At some point of time, until very recently, a couple of years ago, the word blockchain was pretty much synonymous to Bitcoin, right? You think blockchain, you think Bitcoin, and somewhere along the way, Ethereum also came into the mix. But today, we see many organizations really adopting blockchain as a technology to solve real-world problems, building their own private networks to actually solve internal organizational problem statements and so on. And there has been a paradigm shift in the way people think of blockchain, and even non-developers are trying to set their foot into the whole Web3 movement with DAOs and so on. So the question would be, where all, in what all fields or industries is blockchain being used today? Maybe Shilpa, you can help kickstart the session.
Surely. I think one of the most exciting fields would be healthcare, because there's a need for better healthcare systems and infrastructure. So the Sustainable Development Goal 3, that we all need to achieve universal health coverage and access to quality healthcare, I think is something that technology could definitely accelerate, and blockchain being a decentralized platform could enable a lot of cross-border as well in the process. So I think if there is a cure, I mean, every person needs to have the access to that, transparently in terms of information, in terms of reach, in terms of being able to access that information. So I think that could be one thing that could really improve global productivities when this access of healthcare is actually really open beyond just a specific location, and quality data could accelerate better research to better cure, and we all live more healthier, happier lives. So I think that's how I see blockchains changing the game moving forward.
Awesome. Devjani, would you like to add on in what other fields, including healthcare, is blockchain currently being leveraged today?
Sure. So you initially talked about Bitcoin. So let me tell you that Bitcoin and perhaps Ethereum 1 were two blockchains who were working on proof of work models. But nowadays, we are working with third generation blockchains, and many of the use cases, novel use cases, have appeared in the market. So I'll go through some of them one by one. First of all, be it any business, mostly for BFSI, insurance domain, banking domain, fraud control has been possible first time. So in digital world, double spending is a problem which can be totally discarded using blockchain. So that is why you might have heard about cashless ecosystems coming to the play. People have started talking about CBDC. So behind everything, there is blockchain. You talk about philanthropy. If a donor is donating money, but he doesn't have any means to know that where the money is invested, but now the donor can, the entire ecosystem is transparent. Healthcare is already covered, but I have worked in some of the projects which are COVID certificate related projects. That has been implemented in and currently running in production in some of the countries already.
Sure.
Decentralized identity-backed ecosystems are in the play. Like decentralized identity is helping people to share their data, their PII data, the personal data, without revealing it all. Just working on the basis of selective disclosure. Energy trading is possible for the very first time. Like let's say there are countries like in Australia where people are generating their own energy, like they're installing solar panels and they're generating their own energy. And if there is a surplus, then they can share or trade that that energy with other people, and that can be done on blockchain, which is happening as of now. And then comes, of course, inclusion. Like perhaps we can talk about it later on in detail. No, so all these things are possible, and maybe much more with blockchain. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. I think you did a great context setting, because these are all the topics that we want to pick up and speak about during the course of this panel discussion. One of, just to move on to kind of the next question, one of the things that came about when I was having this discussion with a friend is, so basically she's founded an NGO called Why Waste, and she's a huge advocate of sustainability, as we all should be, but she's a champion in her own right. And the discussion was essentially, it resulted in two burning questions, right? One is blockchain as a technology sustainable by itself? And you did mention about proof of work being, having moved on from proof of work to different other types of validation. So maybe that's something we can touch on. And second thing is, are there any projects that are currently leveraging blockchain to sort of champion sustainability and work towards carbon neutralization, right? So maybe Srishti, could you help address these questions? Maybe the first one would be, is blockchain as a technology sustainable by itself?
Sure. So when we try and understand the technology, it's essentially focused around three areas. When we know about the blockchain trilemma, right? The decentralization and the security and the scalability part. But again, there's more of a sustainability angle, the interoperability angle, which are now leading to these changes where we have to weigh out between the three, and that's where there is a movement towards proof of stake. Of course, we are aware of blockchains who are already doing really good work in that, like Cardano is there, Polkadot is there, where we are having interoperable blockchains and proof of stake consensus mechanisms. But yes, with Ethereum merge happening, and again with the sharding, which is due in 2023, that's where we would see a more sustainable ecosystem with respect to the consumption of energy. And that's something that would definitely happen with the merge being implemented. Of course, we're aware that there are delays in the merge happening because of the complexity involved, because we're all aware that Ethereum is having nearly 1 million transactions per day. So that's like a huge thing. So that's one part when we talk about blockchain from a sustainability angle, more from an energy consumption, which would kind of relate to the computation which was involved in the validation mechanisms like proof of work. So that would be the first part, and I'd like to add a couple of things for the first, for the use cases also. So there's also a lot of work which is being done with respect to voting, right, in democratic countries, because we are still having a lot of emerging countries where there is still manual votings. And blockchain is essentially making it very easy to get the results in a very transparent way. That would be one. And again, and I think the most beneficial part of the technology is, of course, we've covered financial inclusion, but how we're able to take care of, the disaster reliefs. And we're all aware that, Vitalik Buterin had, transferred around $1 billion to COVID disaster relief fund. So those are other use cases where there is a transparency in the NGO spending and the expense management. Yeah, and I could cover on the projects, but yeah,
Yeah, sure. Would anyone like to weigh in on current blockchain technologies which are working towards sustainability? Maybe Indu or Debjani, Ritu.
Just want to add on one more domain, like where the blockchain can be heavily used is on the crowdfunding options, right? So it's definitely big time revolutionizing on many startups are coming in on the way, and there are many organizations wanted to get more funding to try their ideas. And many of the time what happens is that trust factor goes in, right? And there have been some instances that like the fraudulent event as well have happened. So blockchain kind of a solution can bring in more authenticity, and it can really protect the donors and even the consumers of those funding, right? So that can help in a larger extent. So that would be one use case which I wanted to add on to what you have been asking from a context perspective. From the other sustainability part, right? I come from Dell. So we believe in creating technologies to drive human progress. To that aspect, what we are doing is like when Dell making the systems like laptops and servers, any product what it makes, we have a goal to reuse and recycle the products what we make. And by 2030, so we wanted to have 100% of the packaging materials will be recyclable one. And whatever the product content we are going to make, 50% of the content will be renewable and recyclable. And not only that, we wanted to ensure the partners, the suppliers, and whoever comes into the supply chain ecosystem, we want them to be part of the circular economy, so that we have a mechanism. We are not just going to produce the systems, produce the product. We wanted to ensure that the way to recycle them as well, so that the circular economy works. Earlier, more concentration was on the linear economy, but now we have to shift our focus into the circular economy. Any product you make, you should know how do you want to take it back, right? So that we can avoid the landfills. So that would be one of the most aspect, right? To take care of these sustainability goals, the supply chain regulatories have much more policies defined. So to take care of that, you need to have a very robust system to manage and track and monitor and control the whole process. So for example, you were talking about carbon utilization. So how do we ensure that really the organizations are doing the expected outcomes, right? But to bring in more trust into the factor, to bring in more best practices sharing within the ecosystem, you need to have an asset management tool which can really track this kind of carbon emissions as well. So that from a sustainability aspect, we will be having a much larger ecosystem to cater and support.
That's very true. Actually, there are a lot of companies these days which are claiming to do some kind of carbon utilization, be it Zara or any of those fast fashion stores, maybe even Gap. So to what extent is that actually being done? Is that transparent information, or is it a marketing gimmick, right? So maybe all of this, like you said, can be really tracked with blockchain: transparency, trust, and traceability being the 3 T's of blockchain, if I may say so. I think Debjani, you wanted to add on something.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, let me tell you that why we are suddenly started talking about sustainability. 5 years back, 10 years back, nobody was talking about sustainability, right? Now, why suddenly we are doing it is because of the climatic changes and the global warming and all these things have actually, we have started thinking in this context. So climate changes could cost even, a country like US, it's going to cost US $2 trillion per annum by 2100. So this is a recent report. So that is why we are all environmentally conscious. And every year, the world is spending around $632 billion to combat climate changes issues and to bring a green ecosystem. So that is why, and also the target is not that much. The target is 3 trillion. As of now, we are spending $632 billion every year. And how this money is getting spent is through different carbon offset programs. So what is a carbon offset program? It's basically any project that helps an individual or an organization to balance their carbon footprint. So it could be something like what Indu was telling. It could be some project which is helping reforestation, or to capture methane from the farm so that it's not harmful, or surveillance of the landfill sites, or the abandoned coal mines. And every metric ton of the carbon offset is destroying, and it destroys we have to produce an equal metric ton of greenhouse gases. So offset is balancing the greenhouse gases. So that is why I will tell you about some of the projects which are going on as of now. So one of the very interesting project is Gain Forest. This is a Solana backed project. Solana is a public blockchain. So Gain Forest is a company that uses a combination of multiple emerging technologies to safeguard rainforests in Latin America, especially. So this is a government sponsored project where they're using drones to capture images of the rainforest, and they're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to figure out that exactly at what place of the rainforest the number of the trees are decreasing. So in that space, they find out who is the owner or who is doing that. So they incentivize those people so that they do not cut down for the trees. So this is one of the examples which is backed by the government is sponsoring that.
I may just ask a quick clarification. So they capture the drone data, they figure out who's responsible for cutting down of trees in that particular patch. Where does blockchain fit into this? How are they tracking it? Could you tell us more about how Solana specifically is being used here?
Yeah, I'm not involved in this project, but what I can figure out is blockchain is used for traceability. That means in every, let's say that they are measuring the number of trees in a particular square kilometer area, and they find out that these many thousand trees are there. Okay, so that goes to the ledger. Next time, let's say in 15 days or 30 days, they're again doing another surveillance, and they find that number of trees has decreased. So, the difference can be calculated from the historical data, right? So that is how they are doing it. And I can tell you a dozen of other projects, like there is Token, Nori, Climate Trade, Veritree, Farm BC. So all these projects are doing something similar. So what they are doing, they are incentivizing the people who are involved in this greenhouse emissions in one way or the other. And this is all funded by the government, because all these millions of US dollars that has to be funded in this project. So that is why every company has started being conscious about how to be participating in such kind of projects.
Yeah, that's true. I'm glad that, there's a lot of traction that sustainability itself is getting, because that's really important. And blockchain will, like Indu and Devajani, everyone mentioned rightly, it's something that needs to be tracked, and blockchain will be an enabler of that thing. Ritu, just wanted to check quickly if you are audible and available.
Extremely sorry I had been dropping off and on.
Okay.
So I'll be, I could not hear a few of those, but I think the first question which you had been asking, right, on how blockchain could be used, right? So I had been already, since this is too close to my heart, I would say, first of all, because first it's blockchain, and second, I had been, giving back to society right from my teenage days. So,
right. I just wanted to ask you about that specifically. So you did mention that you had a lot of volunteering experience as well, becoming a technical volunteer as well. So to kind of switch gears from sustainability, just wanted to talk a little bit more about how NFTs can specifically be used for social upliftment, right? Because anyone, maybe myself included, most folks, when you say NFT, the first thing people visualize is a crazy looking monkey, right? A bizarre monkey, bored ape, pudgy penguin, and so on. So in this panel discussion, we want to understand NFTs beyond that hype. So can you tell us where it's being used in any context that would benefit the society from all your experiences, like you were mentioning?
All right, all right. I think great. I think this is one of the most misunderstood concepts, I would say, if I talk about NFTs. And what I feel personally also, it's not as mature a technology to logically question. So from my perspective, what I see, I'll tell you in a very layman language as to what all we do have in our houses, right? Whether you own a car or you own a piece of land, or it's your home, you always have an ownership record, right? You get it something like from a authority or your government authorities. You know that now people, you can show that particular paper and say that I am the owner of this house, right? Or I'm the owner of this car or whatnot. However, if you look at on the digital side of it, on the digital art, the way the artists work, there is nothing of that sort. So I think especially on the areas, on the use cases where actually ownership is something which could be taken up, I think NFT absolutely suits well. And you know what, I was just looking at a month back or so, I think A16Z, it's a very big, for all those who don't know, A16Z is one of the big VC firms. They fund a lot of Web3 projects, cryptocurrencies and all, and they have showed a report where they had shown that an average revenue which is being taken by an artist by all these platforms, the Instagrams, the YouTubes and all, it's around $0.1 to $3 on an average. Can you believe? And looking at the context as to how people are, these artists are making money on NFTs is around $200 approximately, right? So you can see the difference, and that's where it actually makes a social impact, because we see people, the artists who are very rich in terms of their talent, but not monetarily. So I think this is something which is absolutely good. That's one thing, and the royalty extension of those royalties is also something which is very good to look at, because if you basically have, if you have that particular, you are the owner of, or the creator of that art, and somebody sells that art to someone else, you actually start getting royalties because of the smart contracts and things like that. And I'll also tell you, since I do a lot of NGO work, I work on the CSR initiatives on girl empowerment and social environment sustainability. So I'll tell you a bit of my experience, and I relate it back to blockchain. So when I was in one of the villages talking to the farmers, I see that they don't have the papers of land records. So when I ask them, bhaiya, what happened, they'll say, madam ji, kagaj nahi hai, which means in English is, I don't have the papers. And so you can't claim, right? If you have these as, a public open ledger where, you can keep these ownerships, or, as NFTs, the records, think about the benefit, right? So those are the things. And one more thing which I'm really looking out, I think couple of weeks, or maybe couple of a month or so, there is a concept of soul bound NFT which has come in, right? Soul bound NFT is exactly like until you are alive, your soul is going to be with you, right? So it's more like you can't transfer it to someone else. So all the certificates, or your birth certificates, your mark sheets, or your degrees, everything is something which you can't transfer, and that's where it makes NFTs have started making more sense towards, right? So those are the things I would say from an NFT perspective, it is going to really help us. And if I may have another 2-3 minutes, I would like to add some part of flavor of NFT in some of the projects I have been working.
Can we circle back to you towards the end? We'll have a talk where everyone talks about some project that they are working closely with. So Prisley, I think you before that, yeah, go on, Indu.
Deepika, just one thing I want to add on, right? When we are talking about NFT, so the digital identity in India have revolutionized big time in the last 3 years, couple of years, right? So I got to know a surprising element that one of the techie, okay, a software engineer who is in the system for so many years, he didn't want to have Aadhaar on his own, just because of a reason that his data privacy gets impacted, and he feels that a lot of Aadhaar cards have been compromised in some of the other scenarios, he doesn't want to have his own Aadhaar card. So with the digital identity coming in, digital inclusion happening at the same time, securing the data and the data protection is a vital thing. That is where blockchain can come into play, and Aadhaar 2.0 is going to come in. So there is a big initiative happening around that.
Okay.
It is going to get enabled with the blockchain as a technology. With the blockchain and AI/ML solutions, it's going to get much more stronger. Like Aadhaar 2.0 kind of a projects are going to bring in a major difference to what we see from a social upliftment perspective.
That's great. That's something I didn't really know, which is really cool because it shows that countries like especially India is really embracing the technology and trying to do what's best for its citizens by leveraging blockchain, which in itself is a social good. So that's really awesome. And I think in this discussion so far, we've learned a lot more about NFTs than I have learned in quite some time, because it's not just about art and digital art. It's much more than that: digital identity, data protection, ownership of documents, like of land, like Ritu mentioned. So there's a lot more to it than
one more thing, Deepika, here. What I'd like to add for the audience, which is very important, I think NFT is being considered as like a use case kind of thing. What we need to understand from a tech perspective, that NFT is a smart contract, right? Every implementation of blockchain has a token involved. So when we say that if it's beyond Bora, that's just a collectible that is utilizing a smart contract, say an ERC 721, or if there is a currency exchange, there is an ERC 20 or 1155. So all implementations of blockchain are using NFT. So that's one thing that the audience needs to understand. It's not a use case per se. It has a utility, but it's being used in all the implementations.
Right. Definitely. Thanks, Shrishti, for calling that out. So, Prisley, I think you had a question for Shilpa, right? You can take it.
Yes. So, Shilpa, you had mentioned that you worked on a project on open finance infrastructure for health asset investments. So, can you tell us more about this project?
Sure. So there are two ways to look at open infra for financing infra for healthcare. So one, we were just talking about NFTs, right? So as Srishti as well mentioned, it's just a smart contract, which is over a non-fungible token. Our health data is actually a form of, it could be an NFTable information that could be used for improvement of research. Now, if there is a way that we could all demand what kind of cures, what kind of initiatives, what kind of improvements that require to be done in healthcare system, we could have an investment opportunity to invest in the kind of cure. So right now there are 7,000 diseases that are classified, and the cures are very few compared to the number of diseases that are there. And we all see that there are many incurable diseases that don't have many answers, even when you go to the best of the healthcare treatments. Now, the conversion of clinical trials is barely 10 to 20%. And we as the people could demand more, and there should be a way that we could pre-invest in getting better coverages. Now, if there's something like a blockchain where you could tokenize and incentivize your own data, then every time your data is used during healthcare research, you should be a part of the research process. You should be tokenized and incentivized so that you have the access to that information of the research that is going on. Second, if you want better treatments, you should be able to demand that as an investor, as a person, as a consumer as well. So this kind of an open finance platform would actually enable people to demand better and also invest better. Lastly, I think all of you all mentioned about where grants and charities are going right now. There's not much transparency. Sometimes out of empathy, we do see a lot of on social media and we want to help people. But is the money really going to that person is always a concern, right? About what's happening to your hard-earned money in the process. So if there's a transparent shared ledger that literally shows you how a grant, a fund is actually utilized from the point of bank statements, maybe, the smart contract could check a particular bank statement of the person that is reaching, how it is being used, where it is being used. At the same time, you would be, a lot more stress-free, contributing to these kind of charities. So that's where, blockchain and this open financing infrastructure comes into place, where you could transparently trace every penny, every amount, every data that is flowing in the ledger. And the incentivization and the tokenization of that would enable the demand supply of better healthcare treatments and research to come closer. So that's what I'm very passionate, and yeah, look, hopefully everybody gets the healthcare that they deserve in the process. Yes.
Thank you, Shilpa, for sharing about your project. It was super insightful and definitely a thought-provoking project. Now, coming to Indumati, we have now spoken about a couple of projects which are being used for social good. So, what do you think is the role of open source in such initiatives? With perhaps Hyperledger context.
Yeah. Open source has been evolving drastically in the couple of years, right? I come from Dell, where we have been using more of enterprise products, and now we have really revolutionized on the open source projects as well. So we have been experimenting, prototyping, and then we have been productionizing as well. So in that world, like open source projects, like we have a great community to really get various solutions with the ever-changing needs, with the challenges, what comes on our way from a security and multiple front. It's very important to have that ecosystem in place. And I'm really happy that Hyperledger is one of that forum where we could actively get a lot of support from addressing the vulnerabilities, taking care of the threat modeling. So many other support it's happening. And it has more flexibility as well, right? You don't need to, if you go to any paid enterprise products, you need to have that investment in place. Blockchain is one area where we have been experimenting in some of those places. Before you get to understand how you can effectively use those tools, you need to experiment and feel confident about what you're doing. For that, definitely Hyperledger is one of the platform where it is helping. And we have been seeing that it has both options of permission blockchain and even you can have an enterprise blockchains as well with the permission and with the permissionless. And you can create a large ecosystem on its own. For example, say that from a carbon management perspective, right, you can create a strategic tool to really measure and track the low carbon management within the supply chain. So to do that, the big companies can come back and create that kind of an platform, and they can allow some of those pluggable architectures to partner with the various supply chain stakeholders so that it becomes easy for them to try the new technologies. At the same time, they can feel confident about it, and over the time they will reap all the benefits of the blockchain, the flexibility part, the agility part, the real-time transactions, the traceability part, all can be achieved once you have this ecosystem in place. So definitely it's a huge area, and we would welcome everybody to be part of it. It's not going to be, earlier it was much in finance domain. Now we see more and more in supply chain and even healthcare industry. Many other industries are leveraging the technology. So open source would be one great way to start on the blockchain journey.
So just to ask a clarification here, right? You did mention that we want to use blockchain to sort of track for carbon neutralization, offsetting sort of a thing. So if we're looking at it in the supply chain context, let's say a company like Walmart, where I work, if we want to sort of be able to measure what is the current carbon footprint that our company is currently producing, not the company as a whole, maybe even some small subdivisions as such, how do we go about measuring that before we actually put it into the blockchain? Is that something that you want to talk about?
Yeah. Definitely, if you take up the supply chain as an ecosystem, right, you start from a designing the product perspective, right? You start designing the product, and then you start procuring those raw materials needed to make that product. And then you go into maintaining that right inventory levels. Then you start doing that logistics management, right? Shipping that end product and distributing those products. To really see the whole ecosystem. Say, for an example, when you design a product, what you should be doing is to measure the carbon levels. When you interact with your suppliers and partners, you need to have your own regulatory mechanism, okay, whom you should be buying those raw materials from. Or for example, you are making that product, okay, maybe in a factory when you're making it, you should have a mechanism to start tracking how much carbon you're emitting out of the factories, what you're owning up, right? The whole ecosystem, like even procurement is a big strategic process. When you deal with the suppliers, do they even have a similar kind of strategy like how you are dealing on the carbon management? Right. And similar to that, the low carbon management is a big initiative across supply chain now. Many other bigger organizations have started adopting it, and the suppliers and whomever they can influence, right, from a stakeholder management perspective, they can share those best practices, how they are able to manage it. so that it can really improve. When you come back to distribution and logistics part, right, the material what you make for the packaging, that's one aspect. Other one, the bigger aspect is the transportation. If you really see from an overall supply chain management, where the waste goes is like 80% it goes in the transport management and logistics piece, right? If you can have a better control over there, you can reap really a lot of benefits, and you can start moving towards a green revolutionary world. And moreover, when you design all this blockchain solution, you should think about green computing, green coding, right? I know blockchain would need a lot of power and resources. So we need to have more mechanisms around the open source technology as well, to minimize those computation power and wherever the resources we would need from a system perspective, right, infra perspective, or we can optimize those resources so that we can contribute to the green coding as well.
Just like to add,
definitely.
Deepika, when we just do for an example, what you're saying for the carbon, offset printing, what would essentially happen is, of course, we've understood the dynamics behind that and the need for it. But how blockchain would be implemented as such would be if the different partners are actually, able to contribute what is the offsets, carbon footprint offsets they are contributing, and there is a unified platform which records the data on the blockchain technology and which is shared transparently between the ecosystem partners. And in a sense, if there is any excess, that can enable trading for others. And this is something which is being done. And this is how it's actually done for, carbon, where there are projects where are actually working on carbon sequestration in multiple forms. The offsets are available, and those offsets contributors, like, so for example, the different participants in Walmart would be able to contribute that would give a visibility to Walmart within the local subsidiaries. And that would give a bigger picture to what is the carbon footprint offset that Walmart is doing. Is it in alignment with what you want to do or you don't want to do? And in a sense, if it's a product and you feel that there could be excess, you could enable trading where there could be a governance associated to it. You could have a token and you could mention projects. And this is something that is being done globally. Like I wanted to add previously also, when you have these carbon footprints, you have projects available, people can come in, there would be governance tokens where you can invest in those projects and you can buy the carbon offsets and the carbon footprint offsets. So that is essentially how we need to understand that the blockchain would not be a part of the ecosystem or the nuances of the ecosystem. It would be a technology which would be able to record all this transparently. That would be one part. And the other part definitely would be that all this sequestration and the carbon footprint is being recorded in a database. So there's a registry which stores all this. If that can be done on blockchain, it becomes more transparent. So that comes from the sourcing part of it, where you have an insight into the traceability of how the footprint is coming, whether it's coming from a forest, which location. And the other part would be a trading part where you can have an insight into the whole contribution as well, and exchange enablement can be done using the platform.
Sure. Shilpa, you want to add something?
Yes. Having worked in supply chain and manufacturing, one more thing that practically is done is binding the IoT devices in different stages, so that data directly comes into the ledger in a tamper-proof manner. Now, why this is important is when a large logistic company or a large manufacturing company is working, they work with multiple third-party contractors, and a lot of wastage happens when it's not fully in control of the host company as well. So when everything is under governance through these IoT sensors actively, sometimes the process that is manual is a little more conscious. That's also adding a huge deal when it's on a immutable ledger. So if your third-party contractors are aware that it's going on to a ledger that is going to govern it actively, then practices are a little, definitely much more in control as well. And that behavioral change automatically makes a huge value as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Shilpa. Just kind of
Deepika, one more thing I would like to add here is like quickly that we also have to consider that how much electricity a particular organization is consuming. That also adds to the carbon offsetting. So and also, while choosing a particular blockchain, let's say that we are using blockchain for this technology, which blockchain we are selecting? Like, let's say, I'll tell you example, like Bitcoin in its proof of work model consumes around 1.25 into 10 to power 8 joules per transaction. Ethereum is pretty much similar. when it comes to Polkadot, it's 1663 joules per transaction, and Coda is 24.6 joules per transaction. So I believe that Hyperledger Fabric and Coda are equivalent. So while selecting the blockchain that you are going to use in your project, you also have to keep this in consideration, that whether it's something that is environment friendly or not.
Yeah, definitely. Continuing along what you said, if anyone has knows any projects which is currently leveraging any of the Hyperledger projects for social good, not necessarily sustainability, anything, education, diversity, you can probably shed some light on that, Shrishti.
Unfortunately, it's not on Hyperledger, but I can share about a project if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So what we've done is, this is again, you could say from a social. It's a project for token for social good. Essentially, this is for an education university where they want mentors to give train and provide research lectures to the students. So how is that happening is that we've enabled a token for this. Okay. So like a token for social good. So the mentors would be rewarded with the tokens for doing the lecture. So so instead of just being completely open source, so if I'm a blockchain trainer and I'm going to provide a training session on, say, fundamentals of blockchain to a society, I earn certain tokens, and with that token there are service providers available on the platform which are providing different services with regard to the utility. These can be utilized on that. So these are some of the projects which are being done, where you can enable social good and also incentivize in a way which would be helping the contributors to it.
So one more project, Deepika, that I'll tell you about. Two different projects that I haven't been part of, but
just sorry to interrupt, but would it be okay if we circled back to you, because we are running a bit tight on the time? Is that all right? I will come back to everyone sharing their personal projects. But in the audience, we see that there is a question about them wanting to know a bit more about good fintech blockchain solutions. So I think Shrishti, Ritu had, you folks wanted to speak a bit about that. So we recently hosted a discussion on CBDCs. Prissy, would you like to take this question?
Yes, sir. So Srishti, we recently hosted a discussion on CBDCs as a part of our Women in Blockchain series. And there was a discussion on how blockchain is being used in the banking sector. So can you shed some light on what is financial inclusion and how blockchain is helping that cause?
Yeah, definitely. So in a broader context, what I'd like the audience to understand is that we're already having a traditional banking system. What we are trying to innovate and implement with the technology per se, whether it be blockchain or DLT, is kind of enabling an open finance, where we could get one, accessibility, so that we could serve the people who are unbanked, two, a transparency, and three, more of efficiencies with regard to the removal of the intermediaries. So that's more from like a perspective of open finance, you can say, or a decentralized finance, or DeFi, how we put it. And we talk about fintech solutions here. Of course, all the solutions across the banking, whether it be lending, whether we borrowing, whether it's a prediction market, whether it's a derivative trading, or different use cases, a loan tokenization, all those have impact and beneficiaries if those are implemented on a blockchain technology. So for example, if you're working on one in the client with one of the leading banks in globally is on a use case of loan tokenization. So what that essentially means, that your securities and bonds would be tokenized, and the dividend payouts would be done transparently through the platform, which of course we have built. What are the benefits as compared to an open banking? Of course, one is again that it ensures 24/7 liquidity. You are not limited by time zones. You're not limited by hours. and of course the transparency, and then also a fragmented approach so that no barrier, right? You can have assets and you can take it in small fractions, procure the assets, and the payouts of course happens through smart contracts, which makes it more fast, and that leads to the efficiency. So that's one example. I could move further if the time permits.
Yeah, we'll again circle back to that because there
Sure.
are a lot of topics that we still want to kind of cover. Yeah, but it was great to know that, blockchain does promote financial inclusion to a large extent. So one of the other questions that we had is perhaps, Indumati, you can take this. So, as a senior director at Dell, you bring in a perspective of how corporates are run, like you mentioned, initiatives that run parallelly to your day-to-day business, right? So how can we create for-profit organizations which actually leverage blockchain for social good while also having practical business model?
Yeah, definitely. I can just connect to one of the use case what we are working on now. So blockchain as a technology have been evolving for some time. So what we should be doing here is, as an organization, if you get an opportunity to work on a certain domain, you should create some solutions, kind of a pluggable and reusable components which you can create so that any partners can leverage that with a very minimal cost. With a very minimal time and effort, like they should be able to start those solutions. Like that, we are doing one thing on the supply chain, material movement process, material management process. What we are doing, where what we are doing is like from factory we receive materials, and from the factories, like there are suppliers, there will be some logistic partners who will be interacting with us. They may not have the whole ecosystem like what we have in Dell. Instead, what we are giving them is like a small pluggable solution so that they can just plug it in their own IT ecosystem and do it. Even in some cases, we give them some kind of an good tools and platforms so that they can, with just a browser clicks, right, you should be able to connect with us and they should be able to do the transaction. Likewise, the focal companies should be able to create such a platforms so that anybody should be able to come and leverage this kind of technology, and it's going to transform big time. So we should be really giving those provisions so that even in newer companies, startups, if they want to experiment certain things, we should be flexible enough to partner with them and create the larger ecosystem.
Fair enough. Shilpa, would you like to add on to this, perhaps?
Surely. So I think in terms of right now, like in, So in terms of like the current situation, there are like, mechanisms that are required for e-consent mechanisms as well. So e-consent mechanisms, by that I mean that every time anything is used, our data, there should be a way that, monetization happens for it. And with this facility, there is a lot of financial inclusion that comes in because every time your data is being used, you get rewarded for it. Now, that's very important even in terms of healthcare. And like there are e-consent mechanisms initiated by Linux Foundation Public Health, along with Hyperledger Indy. And this actually helps us to give us a base that allows this, to on different industries. And that's where I see, like the sustainable model for such businesses to run on, and it makes a win-win for participants that are getting on the blockchain as well as companies that are leveraging this as well. So that's what I see as a financial model that could sustain in leveraging such infrastructure.
That's awesome. Thanks. I think one more thing, leading on from healthcare is pharma. Pharma is a big industry. So we just, maybe Ritu, you can take this, right? COVID kind of disrupted life as we know it. So how did, and there were a lot of new processes that came into the picture, vaccinations, COVID certificates, and so on. So what are some ways in the pharma industry where blockchain is leveraged, and maybe specifically, how did it help during COVID? Debjani and maybe Ritu can take this. Ritu, would you like to start?
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the projects, I'll just quickly, talk about it because I think time is short. So one is, which is about, counterfeiting. So I was going through an article. It actually talked about how counterfeiting drugs are, entering the our own system. It's around 30% of the drugs which are there in developing countries, they are, counterfeit. So that's where, blockchain could help. I was looking at why this so much counterfeit is happening. So one or two specific reasons which I could find out was, since the data is, in silos, people are not able to, look at this entire visibility or traceability of the drug, right? So they don't know if they are consuming a fake one or not. And there is an entire process which goes, the pill which you are taking today, it's actually being conceived at so many years back, and all that drug discovery and, clinical trials and all those things, happen. So the kind of visibility which blockchain could give, I think that's something which is to be, seen at, and many people are working on this. The other part, which is quite case for blockchain, I would say, is clinical trials. So clinical trials, basically most of the time what happens is the consents are not being taken. So clinical trials, I mean, for those of who you do not know, these are, when the drug is being made, they are being tried on patients of history or maybe not of history, right? So those drugs have to be tested before they enter the market. That's what the clinical trial all talks about. And the people who participate in these trials, they are either, when the drug changes, they don't get a consent, or, they sign on expired forms, or, the actual investigator does not sign it, or maybe signs at the last page, and there are parental permissions which have to be taken, the authority approval, and so on and so forth. So where this actually goes into good is what I'm getting at. So if there are any adverse drug reactions which happen, or God forbid, if the person doesn't survive for some reasons, then there is no way to their families to claim for any insurance at all, right? Because on papers, I mean, there was no that is something where blockchain and pharma could really help, right?
So to add my experience, I did a very interesting project. I believe that most of you would be interested. This is a project for seamless travel in airports, where we had used COVID certificates. So this is for an Asian country, a huge airport where the number of travelers is very high. So using some decentralized identity platform and biometrics, the traveler is sharing all the data before leaving, 24 hours before the traveling happens. And when the traveler is actually traveling and entering the airport from a distance, the airport cameras would be able to know that who the person is and match the records. And if all goes well, then all the check gates would automatically open for the traveler. So this is a wonderful use case, which is still in pilot mode and may go live pretty soon. In some parts of the world, similar use cases have gone live. Like in London airports, I have heard that they have implemented this.
Okay, that's actually really interesting. That's super cool. Thanks for sharing. Prisley, would you like to ask any further questions?
So Dabajani, your books have been translated to Chinese and German. And could you say more about those?
Yeah, I started writing about blockchain from 2017, when the industry was not that much conscious, and like some of the projects that I participated in initially, because most of the organizations had got very little funding into it, so I worked independent for a couple of years to gain understanding and be part of many of the projects which are one of the first in their area. Like I worked in a money market project, instant settlement in money market, instant settlement in capital market in Switzerland. So those are one of the first, and they have been awarded for their groundbreaking innovations. And I always wanted to convey that message to others. So that's why I started writing books. I believe that many of what the projects I did, they are set as an example. You can find them on R3Coda website and all. So yeah.
That's Absolutely wonderful. That's really cool. I think Shrishti, I mean, leading on from what Debajani said, right? It's a global movement right now. Any new initiative that you're trying to bring in will have to work across countries, and the way things are currently, they'll have to work across blockchain networks as well. So, can you kind of help us understand some projects? You mentioned Polkadot, right? So, how is blockchain interop really important for social initiatives? Any project ideas or potential projects or existing projects which leverage interop to achieve any particular use case socially?
Yeah, definitely. So, in the first place, we need to understand what is interoperability, right? Because we're having a large network and different networks, and there are evolving blockchains coming. So there is we are having layer zeros like Polkadot, layer 1, and then the ever evolving and increasing layer 2s, which is happening because of the need of it, of course, because we want to scale it. So it's very important that we have a platform or a solution where it's interoperable, right? Because so that there are no gaps and people are not fixed, and not and there's not waiting time. So that's one part when we say that about interoperability, and where it is important, of course, in multiple use cases. So like globally, we are working on a solution with the European Commission, where we are trying to establish an interoperability between different networks of telecom operators, right? And this is different consortium blockchains, smart contract capable chains, like we are having public blockchains like Avalanche, Tezos, and how the movement would happen. When we say that it's real time, of course, it's not real time, it's near real time, because even the transactions which are happening through the validations and consensus needs time, but in a sense, it's much more effective with regard to any other solution. Another interesting solution that we are working, which leverages this interoperability, is of course with one of the leading central banks in the country, where we are trying to establish a platform where we can do the letter of credit. Letter of credit is LC, right? The issuance across the different banks and subsidiaries. So when you talk about a central bank, it has many hubs, right? And the issuance is moving through the CBS and the core banking system, and there are many challenges which have happened. So if an interoperable issuance and can be done, that's another interesting project we are doing. Of course, there are latter parts involved where we would also want to get the trade and settlement part to it.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of things actually, and interoperability is inevitable. Like we say that, it's indispensable for layer 2 solutions for the scalability part, but of course to remove the fragmentation and challenges, bridges, of course, would be one part where we talk about transfers between the L2 solutions, where again, we are looking for interoperable solutions. And second would be an interaction between the networks, and Polkadot is one great example where it's interoperable Web3 internet, how they position it.
Yeah, definitely. I think Polkadot also has this spin-off called Kusama, which is kind of doing the same thing. So yeah, that's great to get some insights. Folks, we're in the last 10 minutes. I know all of you worked on some fantastic projects, and I'd like to hear them as well. Sorry if I've been pushing it till the last minute. Indu, I see that you want to go ahead.
Yeah.
So let's do a roundtable kind of a thing. We'll go around and everyone can speak for a couple of minutes about anything that they want to talk about. Cool. Yeah.
Just one thing, right? When we were talking about so many projects, I just wanted to bring to our notice that Government of India is doing a lot of blockchain projects to build trusted digital platforms. I would urge all of the enthusiasts here, right, to be part of some of those initiatives to bring in a difference to our country. And the next thing would be like, there are two different projects where Government of India have implemented. One for the drug tracking logistics solution, where the free drugs for the people, right, it can be tracked online. That was implemented with the blockchain technology. You can just go to the platform and see it's there in the Government of India website. Similarly, there is another project called academic certificate document, okay, which is implemented based on the blockchain technology for the CBSE students, like for 10th and 12th grade people. Anytime they can just go and verify their marks and credentials in the website. So that also implemented using the blockchain, where many times our certificates gets validated. Now that is becoming a one place where without having much of dependency, they should be able to go and check. Anybody and anyone can go and do that. So there are some good government projects which is really going to help us from the social uplift standpoint. And I would urge the enthusiast engineers to contribute there so that we can have a secured, better society. Thanks.
Secured future, pun intended. So yeah, I actually went through the document for the CBSE leverage, the results leveraging blockchain. And just to bring up a cool point here, the Hyperledger India chapter is something that is very prominently mentioned there, because I believe at some level they are utilizing the Fabric capabilities. I may be wrong about this, but I know for a fact that Hyperledger India chapter is mentioned in that document. So that's like a cool thing for all our Hyperledger evangelists here. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Maybe Shilpa, would you like to go next?
Surely. I think the power of community is the best part with respect to blockchains, because, open source, building in the open and everything. So I think when I speak about healthcare, I think it's not about one organization doing something. It's going to be a collective effort to make sure that the broken systems in healthcare are going to join, in different forms. And I'm sure we are all working in different sectors, but I think it all comes into one common picture when we're building it in the open, so that life is better, the work, the experiences and the processes that are getting blockchain get better and better governed. So let's all make sure that we are contributing through these communities and, add to it in this open source environment. So yeah, I think look forward to that.
Thanks, Shilpa. Your passion towards healthcare, free and fair healthcare to all is shining through in this panel discussion. It's really lovely to hear that. Ritu, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I just want to, add to what Indu told. I think there a year back or so, Modi ji also, launched kind of a blockchain-based digital degrees in IITs. I don't remember, I guess in IIT Kanpur, but it was one of the IITs. So I think it's still paving the way to a lot of, that kind of work. Yeah,
definitely. You did mention during our discussion that there is a specific project that you want to talk about. Is that covered?
Oh yeah, I think a few. I had two projects, but I think few of our co-panelists already talked about it. So I'll just quickly share upon two different projects. One is, of course, the way I look at people are quite hesitant when I go to them for any NGO or girl power and girl and or women empowerment kind of a scenario. So they are quite hesitant in giving or supporting, and the reason is that the trust is not there. They don't know where their money is going, and that's what me and one of my childhood friends, we are building up this platform where you could see entirely where your money goes. So that's one. And number two is on the education part, where I have actually been, this is under ideation, so it's more like when you start contributing to society in a way where all our Discord channels, WhatsApp channels, people are just building up communities, right, for learning. Right. So, for example, you have a Hyperledger Discord channel, right? So what we have done is in a very early, alpha stages, that we have a bot where if you answer a question, right, you get some tokens or rewards. Those are, consider them ERC20 tokens. And if you accumulate those tokens to a level, say, for example, 20 tokens, right, you will be given, or you will given an option or a chance to buy an NFT, which will, you can of course buy it from the tokens which you have accumulated. And those NFTs are something like, a ticket to a token gated community itself. Like, if Linux Foundation is hosting an event, you can get 65% off, or even free of cost, which might be paid for the rest of the public. But then because you have helped so many people to learn and expand, and that's where that comes into play. So you have ERC20, you have 721, the tokenization part, the incentivization part, and then learning and developing the community come to a level where they can do better.
Yeah, those are some really fantastic, very, very innovative ideas. Thanks for sharing. I'm sure the audience have taken away quite a bit from that. Thank you. Okay, Devajani, would you like to share your thoughts?
Sure. So I got certain dreams about blockchain. So 3-4 dreams that I'll quickly No, complete. So first one is these are the dreams which would solve some of the biggest problems in the world. First is food. So we know that 30 to 40% of the food is wasted across the globe, even in a country like US. So we need good supply chain system in food. So that is number one for blockchain. Number two is water. We know that 3% of the world's water is fresh water, and 1.1 billion people across the world lack access to water directly. Even right now in Wall Street, people have started trading water as a commodity, as a future. So that is why I want that in future we have to keep all the utilization of water that be it an organization doing, an individual doing, a country is doing, a state doing, everything should be on blockchain. So that is my future dream. The third dream is digital identity for all. So there is the biggest project regarding this is ID4D. This is a World Bank project which has got a vision to provide identity to everyone on Earth by 2030. So currently more than 1 billion people do not have any type of identity, so any digital identity. So that is what is also one vision that we have by 2030 on blockchain. And this would also lead to responsible social media like Twitter, Facebook. We won't be able to see any fake identity, and people can interact in a more responsible way. And also research, many different new use cases would be possible if we have a proper digital identity backed ecosystem. So those are my dreams. Thank you.
That was very well articulated. They say never give up on your dreams. Doesn't mean you go back to sleep. It means you actually act on it. And being blockchain evangelists, engineers, and developers, I think we need to really brainstorm on how blockchain as a technology can be used to, solve these real world problems. And I think the 4-5 dreams that you mentioned give us a very good structure or framework to ideate on. So yeah, thanks for that. Sisti, would you like to go next?
I'd like to highlight few of the good works which is happening, right? So World Economic Forum is one of the organizations which is actually leading emerging tech, and we're initiating a project with them on the smart city perspective, where the data sets between the different entities involved in a smart city could be monetized, and an exchange and a marketplace would be enabled. So that's another interesting use case, and a project that we are essentially working in India with nearly 40 to 50 smart cities, and that the impact is evident, where we know that data is the new oil. So why not use it to make something? So that's one thing which I'd like to share with the audience, which they could also look into, which is like an interesting angle. Another, like I think Devyani mentioned regarding social media. So essentially what's happening, and we are in discussions with a lot of clients and delivering some of the solutions. I cannot take the names, but digital rights management is another interesting use case where the patents can be protected. And more from an open source point of view, there are platforms being enabled in progress, where you and me as creators would, while we are already contributed to the big organizations, we can also have ownership to the content, and also get some incentives beyond that, and there would be definitely a loyalty mechanism associated. So these are two interesting projects I would like to mention, apart from another one which we are currently delivered in Dubai, where it's a DAO which we have enabled, and again a non-profit. When we talked about like a business model, an inherent business model with impact, so what it does is that you can have your projects, you can put in your proposals, right, for different projects. So it can be a house that you want to prepare, and you need a fund for that. It can be maybe a shelter that you need to provide or something like that. And grants are allocated through the platform through a token which they have enabled, right? And in a sense, currently it's of course non-profit, but if you see it in the longer vision, when there would be a large number of consumers and adoption of the platform, that would lead to a value creation of the token, which essentially right now is a smart contract. right? And essentially it would have an inherent value with that. And that's where the business model impact would come, maybe in a time period of 3 to 5 months. And that's how the non-profit organizations would actually be able to benefit from these initiatives while also contributing towards the ESG frameworks or their sustainability goals.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And, speaking of DAOs, come together to achieve some kind of a goal, right? And I think one of the few DAOs that became very popular was the Constitution DAO, because people wanted to buy the US Constitution. But, that aside, a DAO that has been really super helpful in the recent past has been the Ukraine DAO. And they managed to actually raise $3 million in Ethereum to be able to fund the Ukraine army. So that clearly is a really good example of how society can benefit through blockchain. And I think there are a lot of resources online also how to get involved with DAOs, even if you're not a developer, be it a HR person, finance person, and anyone can really get involved with DAOs, by purchase some tokens and actually work towards the upliftment of, not specifically upliftment, but work towards the cause that the DAO has been formed for. And if philanthropy and social work is something that you're into, find an appropriate DAO. There's so many related to sustainability, women empowerment, education, and healthcare also. So, that's something that you can definitely get involved with. So I think we have completely run out of time now. So it's been a wonderful discussion with all of you. I think we learned so much more about blockchain today. Many real world use cases went beyond NFTs, went beyond the hype words, and really understood how it affects the people, at the grassroots level, including farmers, and how blockchain can really help solve very, very real world problems. I've had a wonderful time with all of you, and I hope you don't mind the puns and jokes that I have cracked in the middle. But thank you so much for taking the time out to be here with us today. And at Hyperledger Foundation, we're always towards open sourcing, helping everyone in the community. So if anyone's out there who really wishes to contribute towards social upliftment, a great way to do that would also be to start contributing towards Hyperledger itself. So Prisley, would you like to give the closing thanks before we hand it off to Kamlesh?
So as we are winding up our session, we would like to thank all our panelists, Shilpa, Indumati, Ritu, Devajani, and Srishti, for taking time out of a busy schedule to be with us today and for sharing your valuable insights into this topic. Also, we'd like to thank Hyperledger India chapter and Sengit's group for providing opportunities for our communities to speak more about these upcoming technologies and to learn from one another. Also, thank you to everybody else who supported in organizing this session and putting it all together. And a big thank you to all our lovely audience members for joining us today. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of this panel.
See you all. Kamlesh, would you like to take over? I believe we have a networking session now. Yeah.
So thank you, Deepika and Prisley. I think it's really, really nice, interesting. And thank you, Srishti, Silpa, Devjani, and Indu, Ritu joining with us. And I think you all talk about the sustainability, social goods. So maybe you can check out the Hyperledger Social Impact Group, where there are interesting projects in social impact. And there is another SIG like climate action and accounting. You can then also look into that one. So thank you for all joining. I think Julian, we can stop the recording.